I grew up in Queens, New York, a couple blocks away from my grandparents. My grandparents left Europe right before World War II and escaped and traveled to Hartford, Connecticut. From Hartford, Connecticut, then they came to Forest Hills and lived near us. And so I visited my grandparents often in my childhood. I remember one particular time when I went to my grandmother's house, and I came in turn. Usually when her grandson, I think I was maybe 10 years old, usually when I walked in, she greeted me with great joy, with smile, usually of course with a cookie, maybe some cake. But this day was a little different. This day I walked into her home and she was sitting in her chair and she was sad. She was thoughtful, she was reflective, and it was different, it was unusual. And I asked her, I said, "Grandma, what's wrong? What's going on?" And she said to me something that just probably slipped out. It wasn't something you really say to a 10-year-old, but it's something that stayed with me for the rest of my life. She said to me, "You know, when we left Europe, we went the wrong direction. We traveled west, we came to America, but we should have traveled east. We should have gone to Israel." It's a thought that my grandmother mentioned to me when I was just a young boy that stayed with me and that fueled in me a sense of Israel being the place for the Jewish people, of Israel being our home. And it's this sense, I think, that also runs throughout the parsha that we're about to read this Shabbat, Parshat Lech Lecha. You know, in the middle of the parsha, Hashem says to Avraham, he introduces himself before the Brit Ben Habtarim, and he says, "Ani Hashem asher hotzaticha me'or kasdim, l'teit lecha et ha'aretz hazot l'rishta." I am Hashem, who took you out of Or Kasdim. And our commentators all wonder, what exactly does this pasuk mean? Because in truth, if we think about it, where was Avraham? Where was Avraham when he received his command of Lech Lecha? The simple reading of the psukim is that Avraham was in Haran. Avraham was already in Haran, and it was in Haran where Avraham received the message of Lech Lecha, and that moved him to go to Israel. So what does Hashem mean when he says, "Ani Hashem asher tzeticha me'or kasdim," that I took you out of Or Kasdim, which is a place earlier in Abraham's history, where Abraham was, perhaps, when he was a younger man. And there are many different approaches that the commentaries offer to suggest ways of explaining the seeming discrepancy in the pasuk. But I'd like to suggest a specific approach that ties Abraham to his father. See, at the end of Parshat Noach, we're told that Vayikach Terach et Abraham beno v'tzlot ben Haran ben beno v'tsarai kalato eshet Abraham beno v'yitz'u itam me'or kasdim lalechet arza Canaan. That Terach, Avram's father, actually took Abraham and Sarai and Lot, and he left Or Kasdim to go to Eretz Canaan, to go to the land that we know now, of course, as Israel. V'yavo ad Haran v'yeshvu sham, and then he came to Haran and he stopped there. For some reason, Terach didn't complete the journey. He intended to go to Israel. In fact, Chazal tell us that Terach, at the end of his life, perhaps did tshuva, which may be tied to this pasuk, that Terach intended to actually get to Israel. But he didn't make it. He stopped at Haran. Abraham picked up, in a sense, where Terach left off, and he continued the journey, and he made it to Israel. And that's why when Hashem says, "Ani Hashem asher hotzeticha me'or kasdim," I am the God that took you out of Or Kasdim, what Hashem is saying and signaling to Abraham, that it's not just your journey. Although you are the one who actually made it to Israel, when I think of your journey, I don't just think of you from Haran. I think of the generation before you. I think of the generation from Or Kasdim. I think of Terach too. I think about the Jews that wanted to get to Israel, that weren't able to get to Israel. They too are part of this journey. They too are part of this great transition from Chutz La'aretz to the Promised Land. There are a lot of reasons why one would, of course, want to make Aliyah. You know, I'm certainly not one of the Olim or the Rabbanim who think that every Jew has to live in Israel and it's the only place for Jews to live. I think there's wonderful work There's wonderful things to do in Chutz La'aretz as well, and important things for Jews to do in Chutz La'aretz too. And there are reasons also to stay in Chutz La'aretz. I think that's 100% true. But of course, there's also a lot of reasons to make Aliyah. And there's wonderful, special, miuchad things that only happen here. For example, just living in a Jewish country, just being part of participating in a public square that's filled with your traditions and with your symbols and with your holidays. Just walking into a store on Chol HaMoed and being greeted with Chag Sameach. When the calendar runs according to your tradition, the sense of living a full Jewish life, surrounded by all of the Jewish symbols, surrounded by Judaism all throughout the country. And more than just the Judaism, it's the Jewish people. Living in a place where you're surrounded by your Jewish family. You know, just the other day, I was driving in Yerushalayim, and I got lost. And I didn't know where to go. So I pulled over. There was a guy standing on the street, and I said to him, can you give me directions to the place that I was going? And he said, if you want me to help you, I could help you. I could get in, I could show you the way. And he gets in my car, and he shows me the way to get to where I'm going, and I'm driving him with me, and he gets a call. And I overhear the call, and a guy says to him, "Hey, Fata, where are you?" And he explained to him that he's helping this guy, find his way to, and I thought that I was driving him and we were going in the same direction, and I was helping him out, but I wasn't. He had to be somewhere else. He got in my car and helped me to go out of his way, just because I asked him for help. My wife was driving into the Malcha Mall a couple of years ago, and the security guard says to her, he goes, "Do you see that you have a puncture?" A puncture is a flat tire. So she says she didn't know. So he asked her to pull over. He said, "Do you have the tools to fix it?" So she didn't really know what to do. So he goes to the trunk, picks up the trunk, takes out the tools. He lifts up the car. He changes the tire, puts in the new tire, puts down the car. And my wife was so grateful and said to him, "Is there something? Can I give you money? Can I pay? Can I just to show my appreciation?" And the security guard looked like he was offended. He's like, "Lo, ani lo lokachet kesef lazor et achoti." I don't take money to help my sister. The sense of living in a Jewish country, surrounded by Judaism, surrounded by the Jewish people who are your family. Okay? You can't describe that feeling, the feeling of what it means. And it's not just the living in the present, but it's being part of the Jewish future. We're building the Jewish state right now. It's a young country. There are many needs. And of course, one could do many things for the Jewish state outside of Israel too, and that's also important. But there's something different when everything that you do, the act of raising your children, the act of buying milk in a store, everything you do contributes to the economy, contributes to the state, participates in the building and the future of the Jewish state. This is a special time. It's a special time to be in Israel. It's a special time for our present, and it's a special time where we're building for the future. It's not just about the present and the future, it's also about the past. It's about being part of Jewish history. It's about being part of the Jewish journey. Of course, we know, as is written all throughout the Tanakh, that Israel is the home of the Jewish people. It's where we were brought to by Hashem. It's where Hashem promised that He'll give to our forefathers, to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. It's where we belong. But then we were punished. We were exiled. We were sent out of our land. And every generation subsequently just dreamed. They dreamed of returning home, of returning to Israel. When my grandmother expressed her wish or her sadness that she went west instead of east, she wasn't just talking about herself. She was talking about the tikvah, she was talking about the hopes and the dreams of her parents, and her parents before them, and their parents before them. All of her ancestors, all of the generations that lived throughout Europe, throughout the diaspora, throughout the galut, all the generations who just dreamed of the opportunity to return back to Israel, to return home. And it was that thought, it was that sense that I got from my grandmother that I thought about specifically when I was on the plane, the Nefesh B'Nefesh flight, when I was making my own Aliyah. Because when I left that plane, when I stepped off those stairs as a Toshav, a Medinat Yisrael, and I walked on this land, I thought to myself that I am not coming alone, but I am bringing my grandmother with me. And I am bringing her parents and her parents before. Just like Hashem said to Avraham, Ani Hashem she'etzeticha me'or kasdim. When I think of your journey, Avraham, I don't just think of you. I think of the generations before you too, who just dreamed and wished that they could make it into this land. They're all part of this journey. And that is true about building Medinat Yisrael today. It's not just us. It's not just those olim, it's not the toshavim. It's everyone of all the past generations. It's all of our journeys. It's all of Jewish history that's being gathered together here in this holiest of lands as we rebuild the concept of the Jewish state. Ani Hashem, she'etzeticha me'or kasdim. Hashem who took us out of Or Kasdim is the Hashem who took us out of Europe, took us out of America, took us out of all the cross of the eastern lands, took us out and brought us back to the promised land, brought us back to Israel. We were once sent out of our home, but we have returned home. And this time, Bezrat Hashem, we are here to stay.